The Wests Tigers podcast is brought to you by the Wests Tigers Podcast Forum. Join the conversation today at weststigerspodcast.com.au.
It's the West Tigers podcast, and I believe it's episode 419. That's what Eddie said on the other pod that the boys recorded, which I think is a really good listen with Coach Adele and Gary and Rob. But Steve, we're here. We're the traditionalists. We're doing the traditional West Tigers podcast, and it comes after a win. It's a post-victory edition of the West Tigers podcast, which I always have to joke. I have to look up in the manual as to how to do one of these because we don't get an awful lot of practice at them. Your one word out of that very slim 1-point victory over the Titans.
Oh, I'm going to try to be positive about that win and just say my one word is needed. It was a victory really needed. If we'd lost that game to the last place Titans and put ourselves back in contention for the wooden spoon, I think it would be a pretty difficult pill to swallow, that one. So the whole club, the whole fan base, the playing group, everyone needed that victory, I think.
Needed is a very, very apt word, and I very much agree with you. The club, the coach, the players, the fans, needed is the word. I've got a couple. I've got physicality, because we actually had a player out there playing on the left side who delivered really good physicality, both in offense and defense, and really looked like a first grader, so we'll talk about him shortly. I've got fragile, and that's something that we've spoken about a fair bit, Steve, and I want to talk a little bit about that on this edition of the pod, and that is the team still at times looks extraordinarily fragile, where something just the wind blows, shifts direction, blows in their faces, and we go to water. So fragile. But I thought it would be nice to just say fans, Steve. Now, I didn't get the chance to go out to Leichhardt, but obviously watched it on television. And I remember talking about this in one of the games last year that we won. I was just so happy to see happy people in West Tigers colours up on the hill. And I think, I can't work out, let's put it that way. I can't work out why people like us stick around. And you look at that hill and it's chock full of people, and I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Why do they keep turning up? So a pat on the back for all the fans. It's a rusted on fan base, isn't it, Steve? Like, if they haven't got rid of us yet, they're probably not going to.
Look, I heard a great description of the game on the weekend by Dan Ganane on 360 earlier tonight. And he said there were 14,000 screaming West Tigers supporters out there. And mate, I did not see, normally when Leichhardt's packed, it's packed with Tigers supporters, but there's a good spattering, if not more than a good spattering of opposition supporters. I did not see one Titans jersey all day. Yeah. It was 14,000 Tigers, but Dan Ganane said they went through 79 minutes of frustration, but they're going to go home, remember the 1 minute. Yeah. It was outstanding. And I thought that's a perfect description of the afternoon, really.
Absolutely. A little bit of Leichhardt magic. I guess that leads me into a question that just come to mind. And we've spoken a little bit about the hard times alienating people and, potentially losing a generation of fans. But I suppose if you play devil's advocate, in a way, it's also kind of brought us together in a kind of way. Maybe it's sort of a shared trauma response or something like that. But in a way, I would suggest that the fan base has been, for want of a better term, galvanised by the difficult times where we've been through this together. So, maybe there is hope.
Well, we've said it so many times. We are a huge brand, and there are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of West Tigers supporters out there, or people that can somehow find a link between themselves and the West Tigers brand. And so when the opportunity comes to go to an iconic venue like Leichhardt Oval, we tend to pack it out. When we start to play decent football, we tend to pack out. Our other grounds as well. People want to come and follow the West Tigers. There's something about getting behind the Tigers. I don't know what it is. There's a bit of magic in it, really. It's incredibly frustrating that it's been so negative for so long and that we've been losing for so long. But when there are green shoots appearing, the crowds are there, and they were there then in numbers, just on 14,000 at a packed Leichhardt Oval. And it's just a sight to behold. And despite the crummy toilets and the lining up, and if you want to have a whinge, you can have a whinge, but there's just no place like it. There really isn't. Well, I went to Allianz the other week against the Roosters, and there was 25,000 there, and it's a lovely place to go and watch footy, and apart from the $21 hamburgers, that's become an infamous comment. But it's nothing like being at Leichhardt. Yeah. Nothing like it. The atmosphere's not a patch on it.
Yeah. And it does raise the question, if the West Tigers can have some degree of sustained success, your Campbelltowns and your Leichhardts are going to... You could imagine a time where they are just members-only stadiums. I mean, we don't know if Campbelltown's going to continue or what form that is, but you could probably see with Leichhardt that in a couple of years, if the Tigers are up in the top 4, top 8, that it might be a situation where you only have members going, Steve. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think so. That happens overseas, so there's no reason it can't happen here. And I just want to raise the question. I just wonder how many games we can end up playing at Leichhardt. And I know the plan is that they say, I think 4 or 5, they've said once, if Campbelltown gets the upgrade as well, and maybe a bit more than that. But the moment's looking like 4 and 5. But if the profitability is there, like when the renovations are done to Leichhardt and they've got better corporate facilities and they can get more people into the ground, if the profitability can get up close to matching what the Tigers get when they go to Combank, can they consider playing more games at Leichhardt? Because I tell you now, the more games we play at Leichhardt, the higher on the ladder we'll be. Because we win games at Leichhardt that we won't win elsewhere, for sure. And so at what point do you say, all right, we might get 150 grand less at Leichhardt than we do at Combank. But we win 3 more games. And we finish 8th instead of not 11th. And we play semi-final football. And does that make up for that 150 grand? I don't have the answers to that, but it's definitely something to consider, surely.
I mean, and the other thing to factor into that as well is does it lose some of its magic if you go back to like it was in the Balmain days where we were playing there every second week? Like, does it lose a little bit of the fact that they are special games and there is a limitation on the number of opportunities that you get to get out there to see NRL? That could change that as well. It also changes the... But then, does a name really matter? Like, we're called the West Tigers. Does that mean that we have to actually be to some degree, in the western suburbs of Sydney? If you are considering that, west of Parramatta is the western suburbs nowadays, it would be certainly a change in that regard. But there are things to look at down the track and work out over time. But looking forward to those renovations at Leichhardt. That's going to be... I can't believe it's ever going to happen, but hey, it looks like it is, so we'll wait and see for that. Let's have a look at the mountain of one-word submissions from the West Tigers Podcast Forum. And in recent times, we've made a couple of back-end changes to the West Tigers Podcast Forum, but a whole bunch of front-end new features and new ways of communicating via the West Tigers Podcast Forum is about to come in the next couple of weeks, so we'll let you know more about that. But a couple of those new members on the podcast forum, let's go with theirs first. Osmo7, their word was crowd. It was a terrible game, but the win was for the crowd to enjoy. That's a good one. The Bing, their one word was Mike, but not the well-known member of the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Talking about Mike, the chicken that runs around without a head, reminds them of the West Tigers. Tiger 70, their word was May. May we avoid the wooden spoon, and may the force be with us. Barra's word was May as well. We don't get close without him. We're talking about Taylor May. Davey Farrell, staggering that we won that game. Mac Tiger's word was stolen. We stole that one. Wagga Tiger's word was confused. A win's a win, but they look like they just met each other. Yeah, look like 17 guys that met out in the car park and decided to come out and play a game of football. Tiger 5150, difficult. It was a difficult game to watch. We made it harder than it should have been, so we made it more difficult than it should have been. It's difficult to see any plan or structure in attack. It's difficult to see how Jack Bird gets another game. And it's difficult to see where the improvement comes from. Yanni's word was who. Who cares? A win is a win. Tiger Tragic 56 contribution was May, the only positive. Peter A's word was IQ, or a complete lack of. Rach 09's word was, how are we still this awful in the red zone after all these years?
Hang on. No, sorry, Joel. We can go with a one word, we can go with a couple words, we can even go a phrase, but we can't take a paragraph. Come on, Rach. We can't take a paragraph as a one word.
Any Given Sunday's word was gods. Eddie's football gods. They finally let one go our way. And we're going to have a talk about the football gods in a second, Steve. Tigersman, confused. We were confused in attack. We're a confused team. How can we be in a better position on the table, play so poorly? LFC Tiger, their word was flat. I could barely raise a cheer. It was, at times, an utterly inept performance from both sides. Tiger Town SFS, lucky to win that one. Tiger Symmetry, deliverance. We banked the win, no small thing. Enumerator's word was thieves. We stole that one. Mike, there he is. There's Mike. Ugly. An ugly win and an ugly game we would normally lose. And on the Richo meter, poor team performance. Farmer Rando's word was 2023. We looked like the Tigers of 2023. Tiger's Eye, another new member of the podcast forum. Coaching. We aren't a well-coached side. Natback 78's word was contract. Give one to Taylor May and to Adam Doueihi for next year. Seek and Destroy's word was punish. Why do I punish myself every week with this team? Canberra Tiger's word was lucky. Tiger Lily said dysfunctional. Lord knows how we won that one. Kenny 4517, their word was diabolical. And Teddy S, their word was Z. That's what grade I thought I was watching. Z grade football. Steve, the football gods, Eddie's famous football gods. We had a little bit of luck in that game, didn't we? The gods smiled on us just a little bit.
Yeah, we did have luck. It wasn't as if we got to bounce the ball that went our way and then we stole, like the Warriors did. It wasn't luck from that perspective. The luck, I reckon, was the fact that we didn't turn up, but either did the Titans. And I think that's where you say we had the luck, because they were very poor, we were very poor, -10. Right? We were just that little bit better. The stats, if you look at the stats, most of the stats do go our way. We made more meters through the game. Our completion rate was marginally better. Our missed tackles were less. So we actually did beat them legitimately, but it was a very low standard game. But, at the end of the day, like, we've whinged when we say we can't win the moments and we don't know how to win them, and we don't. Like, there's no arguing that. We struggle to know how to close the game out, win. But what we saw on the weekend was a team that played poorly, that continued to play poorly, that made basic errors, that never really got into a flow, but won the game. Found a way to win it. And it was a little bit of brilliance by Adam Doueihi. But it was a little bit more than that too. And we'll probably get into it, Joel, so I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but I'll just mention one thing, and that's our left edge attack. And our left edge attack looked great. And we're all going to talk about Taylor May, quite rightly. He was absolutely brilliant, and we've found a superstar in that position. And I don't think I'm being over the top in saying that. And we can talk about that later. But I just want to talk about that whole, like Fainu passing out to Doueihi, getting it to May, getting it to Skelton. That combination is going to be dynamic for us. Doueihi, without doubt, had his best game in attack for us. I gave it to him last pod that I was on, saying that he's doing a whole lot of good stuff, but his attack is just horrendous. And I still stand by what I said. but he was awesome. He straightened the attack. His combination with Fainu, like Fainu giving him good early ball, and the way Luai ran off the Fainu pass and straightened the attack, and then gave good ball to Taylor May, who then delivered good ball to Skelton when he needed to. That is something that we should be really looking forward to seeing develop the rest of this year and into next year. That is going to be a dynamic, powerful point scoring machine. That left edge, I'm convinced.
Yeah, I've got that all written down in my notes. I was very impressed as well, especially without Samuel Afenu, who's normally there and in that position in the back row and is normally making quite a contribution. That makes me excited when he's back there as well. But no, I wholeheartedly agree. The thing I like about Taylor May, coming back to that physicality, is he just looks to have so much strength, not just in his upper body, but around his hips. He just really knows how to power through, and I was really impressed with that. And some
smart.
Of his defence too, yeah.
Yeah, his defence is rock solid, but he's smart too. Like that first try, he's smart and he's a footballer, right? He had the confidence. Like a lot of guys, there wasn't a lot of space there for him to go to the try line down that left corner, and he went for it. He had the confidence and the smarts and the strength, as you said, because he carried guys over the line to score that try. That wasn't a lay down was there to get that ball down, and he did. Like he didn't try to get the winger to come inside and turn it back in. He said, "No, my try. I'm going for it," and he got there. He's it was a super start from Taylor May.
Given he's only played half a game of New South Wales Cup, I believe it was only half a game of New South Wales Cup. Very impressed, and he seems fit. He seems like he was, I guess that the genetics are there. We can see it in his brother, running marathons and playing 80 minutes. So there's lots to be optimistic there. It does sort of shift the centre discussion. We're always talking about centres. Like over the off season, we're talking about Naden and we're talking about Olam and all sorts of conversations. But you would think that May is going to be one of those centres moving forward. And then you start to think, well, Stafford Toa's there, but you've got Makasini coming through as well. So I'm going to be interested to see which way they go with that. I suppose the thing that you could probably say is that barring injury, probably Doueihi's days in the centres for the West Tigers are probably over. But Toa is apparently not re-signed, Steve. Should we be backing the youth there, or should we be giving Toa another contract?
I'd be finalising that Toa extension or new contract as soon as we can. I think Toa's a great footballer and is going to become. I think he's already a very good centre. I think he could become a great centre. I'm hoping that we have Taylor May and Stafford Toa in the centres. And we talked about this. Gary and I talked about this on the pod the other night, where we saw where does Makasini fit in, and he's only young. He's only just started to play all-age football. He's only got a couple of games where he's played against men. So he's still got a bit of a journey ahead of him, and he needs to come through. Maybe it'll get to the point where he is knocking down the door and they have to find a spot for him. And so that's a conundrum that Benji's got to deal with. But it's a great problem to have someone like Taylor May and Stafford Toa as your starting centres, and Makasini, if he's as good as we think he's going to be, sitting in the background, knocking down the door for a spot in first grade. That's awesome. And we talked about Doueihi the other night as well, so I don't want to go over it too much, but I liked what I saw on the weekend. And when he shifted to lock the week before, I don't know whether Doueihi's going to be satisfied in that role, playing 13 or possibly playing 14 in the 14 role. But if he is prepared to give that a go, I think there's something in it for us. I think he gives us another option as a ball player. He gives us another kicking option. What concerns me, and it wasn't a huge, like there were a lot of missed tackles in the middle, but Doueihi wasn't, one of the main offenders there on the weekend. So if he can defend for 80 minutes in the middle, then he could make a goal 13, and he could give us an answer for 13, because we've been looking for it for a while. There's talk this week that in the last couple of days that he might be going to the Panthers or elsewhere or looking. I don't know.
Dragons apparently interested. Yeah.
Dragons as well. Yeah. So I don't know, but if I was in the Tigers camp, I'd be giving some serious consideration to extending him.
Well, I can't see him getting a starting spot in the halves at the Panthers, maybe at the Dragons, maybe. So I think if you're going to play regular first grade, it might be in a position such as lock or utility, and then it might come down to dollars, and it might come down to love of the club. I've got to give him a rap for his goal kicking too. A couple of beautiful kicks from the sideline. The funny thing is, I'd hate to be sort of facetious, but he's still now he's the world's slowest lock. I thought Jackson Hastings had that title, but Adam Doueihi, he takes a little bit of winding up to get up off the line. Just back to the backs. If you play Makasini on the wing, great place to start a career on the wing, but then you've got to try and fit Taruva and Skelton in, and it's going to be an interesting one as well. So, there's going to be some headaches there, I think, for the club, and maybe a couple of tough decisions to make in regards to all of that. We're not going to beat up on the guy, but he had an unhappy game. Charlie Staines, Steve, you do get that out of a Charlie Staines every now and then. He has been used as a backup. He was primarily a backup at the Panthers. Maybe a potential candidate for the shredder, because I imagine that Charlie probably wants a little bit more money than a fringy winger might sort of command.
Yeah, well, it's a pity because I was off him earlier in the year, and I thought for a lot of the year when he's come into first grade, he's actually done a pretty good job, probably better than pretty good job. But he had an absolute stinker on the weekend. He just had flippers for hands, that's for sure. He was terrible, the poor bloke. Like, he's just got to throw that one away, forget about it, and get back to playing decent footy. But if Buller comes back, I think Buller was hopeful of being back this week. So if that's the case, then Taruva back to the wing and Skelton keeps his spot. Because, I don't know before the weekend that Skelton was laid down. I still think I'd pick Skelton before Staines. I think he gives us starts our sets well. His power out of the back end is pretty important to us. But Staines was probably putting a bit of pressure on him because Staines was playing decent footy. And Skelton's defence has let us down, and it did again on the weekend. But, I think Staines might find himself back in reserve grade if Buller comes back.
Skelton gives me sort of those hard-in-mouth moments. Where I don't have a lot of faith in him sometimes. He sometimes looks like everything is going to go wrong, and sometimes it does, especially, as you said, with his defence. Buller coming back, it would be great just to see Buller, Fainu, Luai, see how they combine in the spine, and see how that goes with Doueihi as well, like how that works with Doueihi feeding into that as well.
Well, the thing with Doueihi, it pushes our halves a little bit wider and just gives that little bit of extra space for our halves. But what excites me is the quick ball out to our centres with Buller as a running option, sweeping around. What that does, Joel, it just puts the defensive line in two minds when they know you've got Latu Fainu who can jink and go himself at incredible pace. So the defensive line has to watch for that. We know Luai likes to run. Luai's running game was the best it's been all season on the weekend. So they've got to watch him that he doesn't dart and go himself. But then he can give good ball. He can give good ball to Buller coming around, and joining in the back line on a sweep. He can give it to our second rower. What's his name? Samuel Fainu. Yeah. Coming straight or running an inside line, or he can now go out the back to Taylor May, who gives it on to Skelton. That there are so many points of attack on that left side that the opposition backline have to watch. For the first time in a long time, we're going to create problems for defensive lines. They're not going to know which way to go, and the minute that happens, the defensive line breaks and gaps appear, and that's how you get through and score points. So, as I said to you, I know the weekend was poor. It's a poor performance, but what I took away was that left edge, and that left edge is going to be dynamite.
Yeah, it gives you some hope, for sure.
Yeah.
Benji described it as the worst performance of the year so far. I don't know if he meant the worst win, like our worst performance in a win. I think that's probably what he meant, because I think probably the Melbourne game was our worst performance of the year. I'm going to revert to Mercy Rule here, Steve. He says, apart from winning a game in the 80th minute against the bottom place side, who were ever so slightly more inept and awful than we were, there's nothing positive at all to take out of that effort today. But I would suggest what we've spoken about as a positive to take out of it, that there's some strike in that left edge. That is not just something that looks like it worked yesterday or Sunday. Like, it looks like it's going to work week in, week out, because they're quality players. So that's a positive.
Yeah, look, I think we've just spent 15 minutes talking about positives that came out of that game. There's no denying. It was a very poor performance. Like, the 10 minutes before half-time, the 5 minutes after half-time, like, they've just got to rev up in the sheds at half-time, got told to minimise their errors, and they drop the ball from the kickoff, and then Doueihi drops the ball on the goal line in the very next set. Like, there's 2 errors within the first minute of the second half. And I think we had 2 tries scored just before half-time. I can't remember when the next one was scored, but we started the second half really poor anyway. So there's a lot to be disappointed about, but there is still positives. And this team, in years gone past, we wouldn't have won that game.
Yeah.
We would have been like I said this a couple of weeks ago on the pod, and, we tend to play 10% worse than whoever we're playing. So, we play the team coming first and we just get beaten. We play the team coming last and we just get beaten. It makes no sense. Whereas, we probably still did the same thing, but we found the way to win. Yeah. We wouldn't have done that. That's a positive in itself. It was scrappy. It was a bit of a fluke that we won it, but we won it. No one's going to look at the Warriors win against the Knights. They're going to say the Warriors are a top 4 team. They deserve the win. They got the win. That was a fluke. That was a bigger fluke than ours.
Yeah.
So you get those wins. It's 2 points.
You could also reframe and rejig Richo's meter and say that you go from, because he's talking about being awful to poor to average to good to great, but you could also look at it from the perspective of just losing. No matter what happens, you lose. No matter how well you play, you lose. And then you become a team that starts to jag wins when you play poorly. And then when you become an average team, it's like you win quite regularly playing average. You don't have to play out of your skin every week. And then you go up to the next level. So that's another way of looking at it. And I think, coming back to your word needed, I think we need some of these results to go our way, to bank a few wins, to take some pressure off, to breathe, to just get into a different headspace. And actually, because I think as a fan, even as fans, we're so nervous and so anxious and so traumatized that we're so scared of it and so ready for it to go so horribly wrong. And I think some of that comes through to the players. I think that's the players, even though we've introduced a lot of players, they tend to take that on, that scar tissue. So if we can continue to, hold our head above water and just, even if it's not quite 50% win rate over the next 12 months, but we're in the fight and we're getting some results, then that's something to build on. And then you can build off that and get up into being a better team.
Yeah, I think the old habits re-emerge pretty quickly. Like we are. You mentioned this at the top of the pod. Like we are fragile, and once we start losing, we probably panic. We lose confidence. We're not used to resurrecting ourselves from failure. We're just used to being in failure. And so it's difficult. And we lose one game by a couple of points, then we lose the next week by a couple of points. Then all of a sudden we're looking at the next game where we could lose 3 in a row, and all of a sudden we've won 2 from 10, right? And unfortunately, that's how this season has panned out. Could have been very different. You take the Lockie Galvin disaster out of the season, and this season could have looked very, very different. And I think we could have been, like you said, I think we could have been at the just outside the 8, probably, really pushing to get into that 7th or 8th spot. But we're not. and I think our confidence has diminished as we go. So even though we were rubbish on the weekend, we found a way to win. We got 2 points, and they got to, sing the song in the sheds, and a little bit of belief would have come out of that.
And it's like we can't change it now, and it's like it's all moot. But if Terrell grounds that ball in the first round against the Knights, and who grounds that ball against South, and we're sitting another 4 points up the ladder, it's a totally different conversation. And that's what happens when you get to be a club that just keeps the wins ticking over. You don't have to be the world's best team, but you keep the wins ticking over, and the world starts to look different.
Isn't it interesting, Joel, how the journalistic world works? So if we look at that other fella, he played 79 minutes of rubbish and did 1 minute of good stuff, and everyone's talking about the 1 minute. We played 79 minutes of rubbish and played 1 minute of good football, and everyone's talking about the 79 minutes. How's that fair?
Yeah. It's all showbiz, Steve. Don't there's no journalistic integrity. It's all showbiz. I'd like you to please identify what the 1 minute was that we played well. Can you go back and tell me what minute that was? Or is that just accumulation over the 80?
Well, that last paragraph, and I've heard a few people bag Jerome Luai for that when he ran down the left side. He was half a metre from scoring a try, and he would have got all the accolades of the world. And I think, he did take it away from the posts, but the opportunity was there, and I don't think we want to lose that. He saw an opportunity to win the game, and he took it.
Yeah.
Sure, the structure to set the field goal wasn't there, and I've banged on all year about us not playing with enough structure, but what he did then, he was so close to going there, and we got back and we kicked the field goal. So that's the minute I'm talking about.
Have a break for a second. I'm going to read a couple of comments that have come through on the West Tigers podcast forum. Tiger's Eye, definitely more talent in the team than they showed today. Either these guys aren't up to performing week in, week out, or it's just poor coaching. Probably both. They don't look professional at all. Tiger's Eye saying Bird is lucky to have an NRL contract at all, yet he starts in our side. That just shows we are way too low on cattle. And Tiger Town SFS, a little bit of a longer one, but saying it's true that we have not had attacking structure. Partly that is because we lost one of our starting halves who demanded to be the centre of attention, and it's partly because we have no attacking philosophy. Do we play with a dominant 7? Do we play a ball-playing lock? Do we centre our attack off our 9? We have a new attempt to each week, depending on who is in the team that day and the result of the previous week's game. I'm giving Benji a pass because we have been competitive without a game plan, and I put that down to his capacity as a man manager, but things need to change for next season. If that means we need to bring in new assistants, and so be it, but we need to develop and identify a game plan that we can stick to week in, week out, despite the results. And I think that's a really good point, Steve, because it seems like, exactly as Tiger Town SFS says, that even within the context of a game, we saw that last week, where we shift things around in the middle of a game. And I wonder if that sort of fragility, that sort of, for want of a better term, schizophrenic sort of way that we play in attack is not being helped by the fact that we keep sort of chopping and changing the way that we're doing it. And you made the point earlier, the Galvin situation was definitely a big hiccup in all of that. So maybe that's something that we can work on over the course of the rest of the year, is get a style and then perfect the style.
Yeah, firstly, I think that's an outstanding comment. I agree with nearly everything that he said there. I think definitely Galvin's situation mucked us up because we were putting together a style of play that centred around Lachlan Galvin and what he wanted and his desire and need to call the ball every single play, and Jerome Luai, trying to build the guy's confidence, I imagine, was trying to give him the lead there. That in hindsight, that was a mistake. But I think, before the blow-up, we were all on board with what was happening. The only thing I disagree with that, but we want a basic structure. I agree with that, but we don't want a game plan that's set in stone, week to week to week. Like we've got to adjust to the opposition, look at their areas of weakness. And that's one of the things that frustrates me a little bit, is that we don't seem to do that enough, that our game plan is centered around us and our strength, which is that ticks the box, but it's not centered around opposition weakness enough and where we should be attacking across their defensive line. I suppose as they become more confident and play together more often, then the game plan might expand, and that will start to happen. But nearly everything that was said there is right. I think we've got the playoff appy, the play around the ruck. I think we've got that sorted. When we do that well, we play well. The only concern with that is we tend to be less dominant as the year goes on, and I don't know whether that's because Appy's playing too many minutes and gets tired. Like earlier in the season, we look more dominant than we do through the ruck than we in the back end of the season. But I think Appy controls the ruck beautifully. If we can get Luai and Fainu playing the way they did on the weekend down that left side and do that consistently throughout the season, I think our structure, the way we move around the football field will look a lot better.
It was an interesting strategy, starting with Hope and benching Appy. I'm not entirely sure what the thinking or what the logic behind that might have been, other than maybe it protects Appy a little bit from the collision early on in the game when the forwards are fresh. I'm just not exactly sure, but I don't think that helped with our red zone attack. The first couple of times we got down there before we scored the first try, like we really looked clunky in the red zone with Tristan Hope at hooker. So yeah, I'm not sure what the logic might have been with that.
No, I haven't got an answer for you, Joel. I don't know either. I was flabbergasted, to be honest, when I saw that he wasn't going to start the game. I really liked it. I know he's gone now, but I really liked it when we had Appy playing for 30 minutes. He'd go off just before halftime, have a break before halftime, after halftime, then come back on with 25-30 to go, and Talon De Silva come on the back end of the first half and with his nippiness around the ruck would sort of get in there amongst the tired forwards and create havoc. Not sure Hope has that ability to do that. He can come on and just do a job while Appy has a breather, but I don't like it at the start of the game. There are better minds than me that might be able to come up with a plausible explanation, but I certainly don't think it worked.
And the service from dummy half from Hope was a few passes were a little bit off, and there was some clunkiness in our passing game yet again where the ball wasn't hitting. Tended to, I think, got better as the game went on, but I noticed that in that first half where the ball just wasn't hitting the man in the right spot. So that's something to continue to work on. Maybe that's an attention to detail thing, Steve.
Yeah, I agree. But I do want to say I think we looked down again. It's down the left side. We didn't go to the right often enough to comment, which is a bit of a concern because Stafford Tower's got a lot to offer on the right, and so we've got to make sure. I know that's going to be a dynamic left, but we've got to make sure we get the ball to Stafford Tower as well because he's a good attacking weapon. But I thought we looked the best at times. The flow was the best it's looked all season, for short bursts. What really got me worried in that game on the weekend was our defence. Like we just weren't working to get the lack of awareness, like the first try where I think it was Jaden Campbell threw the long ball. Did he throw that long ball?
He did. Yep.
He threw the long ball. And they scored. Again, Skelton was just so far in field, but there was no awareness. There was no awareness of where their players were. And again, for the try where Campbell kicked across field, again there was just no one there, and there was no one within cooey of that player. So, and then there was another time there where Toa came running in, and they were attacking our line, and our defensive line was retreating. Like you don't retreat when you're that close to the line. You got to go. And then Toa obviously realised that, tried to rectify it, and then ran in at 100 miles an hour. And when he did it on his own, well, that's just useless. Unless you're going to ball and all and wrap him up and put him on the ground quickly, that's a recipe for disaster. So our defensive structure, our defensive plan working together, it just seems that there's a lack of awareness and they're not trusting each other and they're not in sync. And put that together with some of the missed tackles in the middle, the first contact misses in the middle, and the straight miss. There was a few where players would just step round on the weekend. Defensively, it was needs a lot of work.
Well, I'd suggest that the combination between, and I would hope that the combination between Taylor May and Jarrell Skelton will improve the more they play together. That was the first time that they've played on that edge.
Yeah, that's a point, mate. That's a point.
We look particularly poor, I thought, on the right side. Fanua Pole missed a really poor tackle around the halfway mark that led to the Titans getting down there and scoring a try.
No, and Brimson went around him. Well, that was Jack Bird as well. Jack Bird missed that as well, yeah.
I mean, just on that right edge, you would hope next year Kai Pearce-Paul obviously will be on that side of the field, that side of the field becomes more potent and becomes more reliable in defence when he's there. So hopefully that's the case. I just wanted to mention one other thing, and that is Appy not looking at the ball, not looking at the play of the ball, and the Titans stealing the ball. I mean, I thought when that happened, this is not going to be our day. This is horrible. This is terrible. There's Steve, the encapsulation of attention to detail. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. That sort of thing can happen to anyone, and he's the sort of guy that you normally would think if you're going to put someone up there who is professional and does dot all the I's, cross the T's, it's Appy. But in that instance, he certainly didn't. But can I also mention while we're talking about the middle, I don't know who's going to be available next week, and I think you nailed it at the beginning of the pod. I'm not sure whether you said it or whether you read it from the forum, but the only reason Jack Bird's there is because of our lack of depth, right? Like that, he was poor, really poor on the weekend. He's been poor for a few weeks now. I love what he was bringing
off the bench
to the game. Yeah, early in the season, coming off the bench when we were all fit and fresh. But he looks absolutely busted at the moment, and I don't know how long he's signed for, but
2 years.
2 years. I don't know that we can carry him for that long.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, unless there's an injury that we're not aware of, he looks tired and he looks worn down. And starting in the back row is no mean feat, and maybe that's passed him by a bit. I mean, there's a lot of miles in those legs, and he's had the arthritis issues. And I know that he trained to play lock, but I think it probably shows you. Probably the other point, Steve, is that because we've got plenty of middles, it shows you that I think Seyfarth stays in the back row numbered when Jack Bird's taking your spot. Yeah,
that's true. I think what's going to happen, with the guy coming from Newcastle, and then we've got Samuel Afeno on the left. I think over the off season and the pre-season that Seyfarth will be bulking up. Back onto the bench in the middle rotation, which I think is the best spot for him. He's not a weapon out on the edge.
No.
He's not quick enough. He's not elusive enough. But put him in the middle, not starting, I don't think at this stage, but put him in the middle on the bench and get him coming in after 25 minutes. I think he's does more than a good job really. And the effort's going to be there. The commitment's going to be there from him.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've spoken about Doueihi, but I think we need to buy Hassett from the Panthers. From what I've seen of him, very impressed. I could see him being the long-term West Tigers number 13, so that would be a player I'd like to see. Kobe Hetherington re-signed with the Broncos, so he's not coming. So we may have some clarity around that lock position shortly. It's such a vital position in the game in this day and age. I've got to give, as I seem to be doing every time I'm on the pod, giving Sione Fainu a rap. Once again, I thought he was really good off the bench. I would still start him. I would start him over Twal and move Twal back to the bench personally. But I thought Sione was really good again. I thought Suka had a pretty good game as well. What I think that stands out when we look at the forwards, Steve, is the impact that Regan Campbell-Gillard had for them off the bench. I think his performance was, he's definitely getting towards the end of his career. I'm not saying sign him, but if we could have someone like that coming off the bench and making that kind of impact that he did, I thought he was very impressive. But I think the thing too that they studied the Tigers very well and their line speed. I mean, they were offside pretty much every play the ball. They were up on the Tigers very quickly, which needs to be factored into our performance. We really had very little space to operate.
Yeah, and I think that's I think Ladu Fanu's finding that out pretty quickly. Like, I think opposition teams have worked out that he's a weapon and he's dangerous. He's quick off the mark. And they are getting up on him fairly quickly. Very, very different game against the Warriors, though. We were poor this weekend because of basic errors. One-on-one misses, lack of awareness in defence, dropping the ball at key times. We were poor. We got done against the Warriors because we were manhandled by a better forward pack that just absolutely demolished us and rolled through the middle. Now, they got some big guys, they're Locke and as you say, Campbell Gillard, and also what's the other guy who came in off the bench?
Fafita.
Fafita, yeah. Like they got some big forwards and they can roll down the middle.
Yeah.
I don't feel we lost the ruck. We weren't losing meters through the middle of the field like we were against the Warriors. Actually, I think we held our own.
Yeah.
I think we made it hard for ourselves, but for very different reasons. So there were too many missed tackles in the middle. If you go to the stat sheet, our tight forwards and Appy, between them missed a lot of tackles, one-on-one misses or ineffective tackles at the very least. So that was a problem. But the Titans definitely did not roll down the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And in fact, we probably got the better of them. I would say in that regard.
Aside from Campbell Gillard, I'd suggest, which is why my word was physicality, but not in the traditional sense of physicality where we've been smashed all over the field. It was. I thought we did well in that regard, and there was one guy in particular that sort of led the way in regards to that. It goes to show, sometimes you don't need to add in a huge amount. It goes to show that sometimes a team's not as far, and I know it was a terrible performance, and I'm not saying that we've turned the corner, but sometimes just the injection of one player in one position kind of can bring up the team, if that makes a little bit of sense. I think that's, albeit it was dreadful and it was terrible, but I think there's something to work with this team. And if we can just continue to strengthen the weaknesses, and there's probably still 2 or 3, then I think we could make that next move up. And I think Taylor is the first step in that. Now, let's hope he turns around, Steve, and signs another contract with us and doesn't get poached next week because he's off contract next year. That would be classic Tigers.
Yeah, well, apparently Phil Gould is quoted tonight as saying he's the best young footballer he's never met.
Yeah, he's never met him. No.
Yeah. Look. We are still a ways from being a good football team, but I don't think we're that far away from having the right personnel to be a good football team. A lot of these guys that we've got can do the job. We've just got to become a more disciplined football team. We've got to become a better structured football team in attack and defence, and we've got to put a little bit of finesse. Finesse is not the word, but I suppose professionalism, or class. Class is the word. We've got to, add a touch of class to what we do. We make mistakes at poor times. We go to sleep at the wrong moments, right? But I believe that this group, with a couple of additions, we're pretty close to having the personnel that then need to be coached into improving in the areas that are lacking at the moment. I don't know. I would suggest that the fact that this was probably Luai's best game in attack has probably got something to do with the fact that he had a Taylor May outside of him, and was probably confident that if he could create something, he could get a ball to Taylor May, who could then do something with what Luai has created. So naturally, Luai's just that little bit more confident, before he starts to play.
Yeah.
And that looked that way. It looked that way out in the field. Luai was markedly better in the way he attacked and the way he straightened and gave space to Taylor May. It was...
Yeah, good points. I think the thing when you talk about being more disciplined or more controlled or more finessed, see, I don't see that in this team. I don't think you're going to turn this team and this coach is going to be able to recreate the Melbourne Storm. I think what we should be aiming for is we should be aiming for a Penrith of the last few years, where it's just that all-out attack, where it's you can improve the defence, concentrate 100% on the defence, but score lots of points. I think that's probably the team that I see there, and their potential is to go all out on the attack and not become a disciplined, well-drilled team, but just be more of a classic West Tigers flary type team.
But if we just look at defence for a minute, we've marvelled at the scramble, the grit and determination, and the effort on effort, and that scramble defence that we've shown up and shown up. Now, as we've got a little bit, as injuries creep in and players are playing a bit busted, and that's diminished a little bit. But if you can turn that attitude of scramble into good structured defence, right, where you coached a structure, you're all on the same page, you all buy into that structure, you all know what the man on either side of you's job is, you know what your job is, then you go out on the field with confidence that structure is going to keep other teams at bay, hold them at bay, and then you add the effort and the ability to scramble, then you've got a rock-hard defensive line. That's where we've got the effort, we've got the players with the mindset to go out there and do it. What we haven't got is that consistent approach to that structure. That's what still needs to improve.
Yeah.
Whether we've got, and I don't know. I think Benji's the guy. I do. But you said at the top, Joel, and I tend to agree with you. I think we've got to have a look at who we've got under Benji. And I'm not being disrespectful to the guys that are there. I just think we need to have a good look at it.
I think that will be the end of season review findings, is that we've got to get more support around Benji. I think just my crystal ball says that. So speaking of Steve's crystal ball, so it's a win. It's 7 wins. What does the rest of the season look like? Is this a flash in the pan? We'll put it away now for the rest of the year, or there'll be a late season flurry. And are we out of contention for Eddie's? It's now the Eddie Otto wooden spoon. The NRL's renamed it because he's always talking about it.
Look, we're not going to get the spoon. That's for sure. We never were. I don't know what he's talking about.
He's a dribbler, isn't he?
He lives in a world of misery. Yeah. So we're not going to get the spoon. How are we going to finish? I can't see us. I'd love to see us beat one of Panthers or Bulldogs the next 2 weeks, but really I can't see it. I think we can beat. Who we got after that. Sorry, I'm looking at it as we go. The Eagles, they're playing quite well. We might be able to get that. We've got the Cowboys, we can get that. We've got the Titans again, I think we can get that.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say, we might get 6 more points. Six more points. Maybe if we're really lucky, we can get 8 more points. That includes the bye.
Yeah.
So that would be, what would that take us to? 10 wins, is that right?
Yeah, 3 more wins would take us to 10. Yeah,
10 wins.
Yep.
So 10 wins from where we are now. That wouldn't be bad. That leaves us on 26 points with 3 byes. That's not a bad. When you look at the season, you think of that Rabbits game and the Newcastle games you're talking. We were pretty close to a decent season. I'll wait till Wednesday night for Eddie to tear that apart.
Yeah, exactly. But Eddie's, I think, found some newfound confidence in the West Tigers. He seems to go from North Pole to South Pole pretty quickly, Eddie. So we'll wait and see what he comes up with. All right, well, we'll leave it there, Steve. And great to do a post-victory edition of the West Tigers podcast. And when is the ambush going to be coming together once again for another fan event?
So the next ambush event will be at CommBank Stadium in the Bulldogs game. So I think that is a 2:00 game. So we'll be having our ambush event around once gates open, which is usually around the 1:00 mark, and we'll be in the members bar there at CommBank. So hopefully we'll have a guest. The Tigers have said we'll have a guest for that one. We haven't got it organised yet. But
you could see if Lachlan Galvin's available.
Well, he might be, right?
Yeah,
it might be. Well,
bring your rotten tomatoes to throw.
Let's just get there. Let's get there. Let's rev up at the ambush event. Let's get to our seats and then let's belt these Bulldogs. Jeez, that's a game I want to see us win.
Yeah. I'd like to beat these Panthers this weekend as well. All right, Steve, thank you. We'll catch you down the track.
Here's Joel. See you, everyone.